Seeing it's 10 o'clock, the Board of Supervisors of the County of Del Norte and the governing body of all other special assessments and taxing districts for which said board so acts is now meeting in regular session. Only those items that indicate a specific time will be heard at the assigned time. All other items may be taken out of sequence to accommodate the public and staff availability. At this point, let's start with Supervisor Finnegan. If you could lead us in the pledge.
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, if we could actually stay standing, we wanted to take a moment of silence. And I want to thank Supervisor McClure for putting it on the agenda. We want to take a moment to remember that tragic day of September 11th, 2001, the day that we lost fellow Americans and family members, a day that permanently affected us all and how we live our lives, a day that serves as a constant reminder that freedom is not free, it comes at a price. We want to also take the time to thank our fellow Americans who are serving our country in the military and the veterans who served before, as well as those who lost their lives defending our freedom. Thank you. At this time, we'll take any introduction of new employees. Director Blackney.
Pleasure to introduce Susan Peterson. She is, or Patterson, excuse me, who is our new public health nurse, and she will be actually working in our new Nurse Family Partnership Program. It's agenda item 6 on the board agenda today. We're very, very pleased to have her.
Welcome. 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 Any other introduction? Mr. Serena.
Chair, would you like to take item 16 on the agenda along with this one under the consent agenda?
Yeah, we'll go ahead.
I'd like to introduce Antoinette's self, also known as Tony. She's our clerk of the board, and under item 16 you would officially appoint her as such.
Well, we want to officially welcome you to Del Norte County and to working with the board. So I'll take a motion to take number 16 and a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and second. Any public comment? Seeing no public comment. Joey, could you poll the vote?
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor McNamer?
Yes.
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Chair Sullivan?
Yes. Okay. Well, congratulations.
Being
Well,
that you've already been working, now we'll accept you.
No, just a point of order. Does she need to go get sworn in right now?
She will later. I don't think that there will be any reason to do it at this meeting, so she'll be prepared, but now she can't get out of it.
Yeah, you're stuck. Yeah, welcome. Welcome. Well, good. It's been a long time since we've actually had a new employee. I know, that's amazing.
2 in 1 day.
I think Joey's happy about it too, so he no longer has to fill in.
So at this point, do we have any action from closed session for County Council?
Nothing to report today.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this point, are there any deletions, corrections, or additions from board members to the agenda at this time? In order to add an item to the agenda, the matter must have come to the attention of the county subsequent to the posting of the agenda, and the matter requires action before the next regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. Okay, seeing no additions, corrections, deletions. At this point, we will receive other brief reports or announcements relative to the County of Del Norte, programs and projects, progress of the 2x2 committees, goals committees, and our board staff travel training reports. The board may ask questions for clarification, make a referral to staff to take action to have a matter of business placed on future agenda pursuant to Government Code 54954.2A. So at this point, let's start with Supervisor McNamer.
Mine will be very brief. I had the Del Norte Solid Waste, Management District meeting since the last meeting. I also participated in the backpack giveaway, which was fun. We had over 500 backpacks to give away over at FRC, and when I showed up, I'd never been involved in that before, and I saw all these kids. It was fun, and it was actually so much more organized than I thought it would be, because I thought, oh, they're going to open the doors and everybody's going to flood in. But it was just handled very well. It went very smooth. And we kind of got to pick our stations, and I picked the kindergarten through third graders to be able to work with, so they're always more fun. They also, at the same time, in the library room, had tons of clothes and toys that any of these people could go in and take while they were there, and that room was empty when it was over with. So that shows that we do still have a great need out there for donated clothes and toys. So I think they're just about willing to take things all the time over there. I also prepared for and had a garage sale this last weekend that didn't go very well, and then found out yesterday that this coming weekend is the county-wide garage sale. So that might be the reason that it didn't turn out so well this weekend. Another interesting thing, while I was sitting at another building doing some work, a tourist came in and just sat and chatted with me, and he was up here to catch, I think he said, a cutthroat, catch and release. And that was his big goal for being here completely. But then, after us just sitting and visiting, answering a bunch of questions from him, he went over the triplet, got a newspaper, came back, and had seen the article regarding the frogmen and the fish count, and he actually, after he left here and went home, sent me a postcard saying that he actually participated in that fish count and how much he enjoyed Del Norte County. He stayed out at Florence Keller Park, and he did tell me, my only complaint is the soap dispenser. There's no soap. In his thank you note, he said, or the little note he sent me was, thank you very much. When I got back to camp, there was soap in the dispenser, and I said, well, we act fast around here. Anyway, that was just something different. I just wanted to let everybody know that we still have tourists coming, even though summer's ended, and thoroughly enjoyed his stay. And I met with a couple constituents this last week over some concerns, and I also met with our CAO yesterday to also discuss some concerns, and that was about it.
Thank you. Supervisor Hemmingson.
Yeah, thank you. I also attended the solid waste meeting. I had a meeting with staff regarding the RS 2477 roads that are coming to a finalization. We hope we'll meet with the Forest Service and have that discussion. I attended the Labor Day breakfast and got to listen to Mr. Jim Wood, who's a dentist from the Healdsburg area. Very interesting guy. They've done he's a dentist, and so they've done this outreach where they free services of dentistry, and they provided, I don't know how many millions of dollars worth of service that they had volunteers, and pretty neat deal. Really a very impressive guy, so I was glad to get to see that. Unfortunately, after that I had to attend the services for Jamie Pressler. He was a very good, excuse me, he was a very good friend of my son's, just a great kid, passed away in a car accident at the age of 31, way too early. I've had, you know, in his services, I mean, there had to be somewhere between 400 and 500 people at his services in Smith River. Anyway, just a great kid. I had a bunch of calls, and people came in about this CAL FIRE tax. I mean, I just, you know, 2 or 3 a day. People wanted to know what should they do, and there's a site online, I guess, and you can file your payment in protest, I guess. So there's a lot of different options, and I haven't looked at all of them, so I didn't have a whole bunch of information to give them, but I'll be looking in more of that. I was invited to a presentation from the sheriff at the felony investigating unit headquarters. It was very interesting. I was set back just a little bit in how professional this unit is, and how much they are doing behind the scenes. It was along with Supervisor Sullivan. He was there at the same time. It was for me, it was very impressive. I thought they did a great job, and that was about it for me.
All right, thank you. Supervisor McClure.
Thank you. I need to apologize that my phone is at home, and so is my calendar, so it may be a little shorter than normal. I participated in a celebration of the volunteers at the stewards of Talawa Dunes, who have successfully been able to eradicate about 17 acres of the European grass there, and it's incredible how the indigenous plants are coming back, and that State Parks is soon to engage in a 35-acre project out there. So I think that we're going to see some dune restoration, and one of the most important parts of that dune restoration is when that grass is removed, we will see our dunes move, which would be a safety issue in relationship to a tidal wave. So that's good movement. I was part of the solid waste meeting. I have been preparing and will leave this afternoon for the Coastal Commission meeting, which is being held in Fort Bragg, which is the first time in 40 years that the commission meeting has been there. My goal as the Commissioner of the North Coast is that we meet in Del Norte County, Humboldt County, and Mendocino County, so people can have a real true flavor of what our part of the coast is. Last night we had the RAC meeting, and of the $939,000 of requested proposals, we have $239,000 available, so we have quite a big job ahead of us. But I think that Supervisor Sullivan and I might have some ideas that could help out a little bit with some of the projects. And one of the interesting parts of these projects is that everyone that was proposing a project understood the significance of not having enough money. And we're finding ways to work in partnership, and we're finding ways that they could possibly scale their projects back. And usually in this kind of situation, when people are applying, they're asking for the Sears catalog, and you know, they will take a little less, but they want a lot more. And so that I thought was refreshing. I also had a meeting with Jennifer Savage and Zach Larson in relationship to the monitoring process that's going to come to us from the MPAs that have been set aside off coast. My issue is there's $4 million available for Humboldt, Del Norte, and Mendocino to do a 5-year monitoring plan. When I started to do the research and take a look at who's received the monitoring plans in other communities from Central Coast, South Central Coast, and Southern California, I discovered that there are 6 or 7 of the same organizations that are receiving all of the money. And yes, it's, you know, UC Santa Cruz gets a big chunk of the money to do the tide pools. And the rationale is that they're the leading scientists, therefore they should be the recipients of this monitoring. Where my position, and I'm going to hopefully with the support of the board, start pushing a little back with Chesbro's office, because my position is that we have Humboldt State, and we too can have world-class scientists. but we can't have world-class scientists if we don't get the monitoring grants, and that we too can do the monitoring and follow the same methodology that's being applied up and down the coast. So they want to make it a fairly quick process. I think that we're going to probably have to push back a little hard on the RFPs. The tribes are on board with us in the understanding that there needs to be the actual history of the ecology of the tribes, because they have been here for so many thousands of years that they may have information that modern day scientists might overlook. So we want to make that part of it. So we're sending a letter today that's starting to make some demands to Secretary Laird's office. I'm hoping to get in with Chesbro's office in the next couple of weeks, and possibly with Laird's office, and try to make sure that part of this $4 million stay within our communities rather than sitting at Santa Barbara or Santa Cruz as the central research agencies. I was able to serve as a Job's mother at the Mad Hatter Tea with the Seroptimus ladies, and they were so kind to, they gave us half of the ticket price that they had received because of the tragic event of losing the Masonic Hall. School has opened, and I can tell you that I have a house full. I too attended the Labor Day breakfast, cooked a few hundred sausages, I can tell you that, and met Dr. James Wood from Healdsburg, who's city council and one of the primary organizers of the free dental clinics that happen throughout California. They've done, I think, 3. But he was very impressed with the idea that we had our dental van here, and that all of the students in Del Norte County with the opportunity of that dental van have been able to, or will be able to, see the dentist, which is a giant step forward. I too have had phone calls on CAL FIRE. I thought that it was probably going to be put on hold, but it doesn't look like it. I've had several blight calls on trailers, cows, chickens, and the like, and I've had favorable response from CDD in starting to handle those. I also want to bring to everyone's attention, I know it's been one of my anthems, but that the commercial marijuana gardens that are growing in the back countries of Humboldt, Del Norte, and Mendocino County are doing a terrible toll on the environment. And we are seeing dewatering of creeks. We are actually seeing animals that are being poisoned because they use so much they use rat poison to kill the rodents so they don't get in the gardens. And the fertilizer they're using, in fact, UC Davis is doing a study that they're not even sure that the fertilizer that's being used on this pot should be ingested by human beings. So I'm excited to know that Congressman Thompson is passing and is aggressively trying to get support from the federal agencies to make sure that when police go in and bust one of these, and I have a pamphlet up here if anyone would ever like to see commercial operations, but when police go in and bust these farms, they just take the pot plants and all of that fertilizer, all of that the poison from the rats, all of the diesel, all of that is left behind. And in fact, there was a bust in Mendocino County where they took 1,000 plants, saw movement 2 days later and came back, and there were 1,000 plants in the same holes. So commercial operations aren't like they were in the 70s, and I think that we spend hundreds, if not millions of dollars on fish restoration projects, and we're letting our creeks be dewatered. So I think it's something that people really start to need to wrap their head around, that this is poisoning our backcountry and killing our fish. So it's one of my pet projects that I'm not going to give up on. And I think that's about it.
You're good?
You want to go get your phone now?
You got to get your phone, yeah. All right.
Just think if I would have had my phone.
Thank you, Supervisor McClure. Supervisor Finnegan.
Yeah, I too attended, as we all did, the solid waste meeting. Then I had the RDA, the Redevelopment Agency successor agency oversight right after I made the report to the board. It was sort of, nothing happened at that meeting, and I guess the newspaper article hadn't come out by that time anyway, and they didn't report everything I told you. But so we'll stay on top of that, and there's still legislation that's changing regarding the payback on some of that, the ROPs, regarding the successor agencies and the RDAs. Had a tri-agency meeting, and then had the, which we're scheduling a meeting to decide what direction tri-agency should take in the future. Who's going to be doing economic development, who should be part of tri-agency, whether we should expand it, whether we should disband it, who's going to fund it, et cetera. So it's time that the whole community had that discussion, especially all the governments involved. I too tried to attend the breakfast to meet Dr. Wood, but had another appointment, so I had to leave before he showed up. Then I went to CSAC, the State Association meeting. We had a few things on topic. They asked us to take a position on Proposition 31. Proposition 31 was put out by California Forward. Some of the things that would have done would have changed the state budget process, stating that bills had to be in print for at least 3 days before the legislature can pass on it, which virtually would have affected every bill that... Exactly. There were bills that had to do with water quality that were gotten and amended, and then had to do with air quality, and that's more closely related than a lot of the bills that we saw. So there was no nexus between a bill being introduced and what the actual final verbiage was. It would take away a lot of the sausage making, as we like to call it. Also, it would go to a 2-year budget process. It would also talk about that if you have mandates, they have to be funded, and if there's a $25 million increase in a line item or decrease, then that has to be looked at, and you have to say where the money's coming from. And it addresses fiscal emergencies, changes to the local budget process where there would be more flexibility. Anyway, it went through all the committees at CSAC, but as with taking positions on proposition, you have to have at least 30 affirmative votes, no matter how many people are in the room, and they did not get that 30 votes. So there was a neutral or no position on that, but I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more about Prop 31 and how it might be advantageous to local budgets and to the position we may want to take down the road. We also, Proposition 30 had to do with the constitutional guarantees for funding levels, having to do with AB 109 and some of the realignment. And what the CSAC did there, as recommended by all their committees, was to affirm our position that we still were with the governor on his support for constitutional guarantees, which is an absolute must for counties going forward with realignment. There were a couple other issues. One of them was was AB 1098, and it had to do with 4 cities that when they did the redevelopment, there were some guarantees that were made that these cities would then be defunded. It would have hurt them. CSAC said, okay, yeah, we understand that, but the language on the bills, unfortunately, would mean that realignment dollars would be susceptible to be taken for future annexations. So without bothering you with a bunch of stuff that you're probably not going to understand anyway, it didn't go anywhere. It did get passed. It's on the governor's desk. It'll probably get vetoed, at which time we'll try to make it whole for those 4 cities, but not new annexations. Had a meeting when I was down there in Secretary Laird's office, which is a resource agency, regarding what Martha had talked about, which is the MLPAs. There was Kerry Brown from Mendocino County, Mark Lovelace from Humboldt County didn't get out, it was fogged in, so he did not make the meeting. Myself, we talked about the process going forward of the grants and how they would be administered and how they would be awarded, and that number 1, there need to be more time, and number 2, and more importantly, there need to be some local participation. There was a lot of double talk. Ken Wiseman and Kat Coleman from the agency really didn't have a heck of a lot to say. It was more the other person, I think her name was Liz, that talked and put the emphasis on they really didn't want to see conflicts that people that local people would want to put forth ideas for the grants, and then that might preclude them from actually participating in doing the work. So it was a shell game. We all know that there is ways that you avoid conflicts of interest, and it's long-standing, whether it's on this board or whether it's with the MLPA grants. So it's something that Zach and the Sea Grant people, Jim Wallvogel and Martha, will continue to work on, and Jerry, I know, to try to make some inroads. Otherwise, there will be no local participation in these grants. I then, well, let's see, a couple other things. I also had some conversations, as we all have, regarding the fire fees. Very briefly, there was a run at the last minute to try to repeal the fire tax. It didn't happen. It was going to be included in a single source sales tax, which what that was all about was a couple of years back in the budget process, corporations, multinational corporations that did business in California as well as in other places could take the tax, the lowest tax charged in the state or the location where they operated. And sometimes that was much less than California, so California got shorted about $1 billion is what the cost would have been. However, so there was some negotiations that went back and forth. The bottom line is none of that legislation passed. The CAL FIRE fee went into effect. You've been receiving those bills from the from the Board of Equalization. The county is not involved in it. They don't know what the mechanism is should you choose not to pay it. So what I would advocate for is two things. Number one, pay the tax to avoid further interest and penalty payments. Having said that, I know a lot of people won't pay the tax. And you notice I've been saying tax. They say it's a fee, but it's a tax. The Howard Jarvis people will be filing a class action suit. If you would go, if you have an internet, go to the Regional Council of Rural Counties, RCRC's website. There's a direct link to the Howard Jarvis website to sign up for that protest. If you do pay it, and when you do pay it, please pay it under protest, because it is a fee. You will not be receiving any additional benefit to anybody in Del Norte County by paying this fee or tax or not paying it. What I would ask along this lines is that if we could get administration to write a op-ed for the triplicate letting people know where to appeal this tax and how to appeal this tax. And I think that's the most important thing. People want to know what's it all about. We can explain that, but more importantly, how do we appeal it and should we pay it? So the link of how to do it, and then of course the address should you not have a computer. Secondly, the other shoe is going to drop, because this was supposed to be implemented back in June and for last year, so that's the bill you got just recently, and then 30 days later there's supposed to be another bill for this year. So you think it's bad on your first mailing, the next one's going to hit your mailbox in anywhere from 30 to 60 days. So if you were mad before or now, you're going to be even madder in a few days, a few weeks. It's probably one of the worst examples of our legislature and what they did, because what they did is they passed a bill authorizing this fee several years ago, sort of like they did with 885 with the septics. And then somewhere down the road, they finally agreed on how they were going to charge and what they were going to justify it with. So that's enough of that. And then also on the next agenda, I already spoke with Jay, and I think it'll be there, that MOU with the Forest Service, the BLM, and the county regarding a required meeting by those agencies with the county on things that would impact us. And that's about it.
All right, thank you Supervisor Finnegan. I've also dealt with numerous complaints from constituents and folks in the community that around this SRA fee that they all got a bill for. The website is firetaxprotest.org, or you can just Google Howard Jarvis taxpayer, and as Supervisor Finnegan said, pay it under protest, and the actual petition on that website actually gives the reason. You just need to put your parcel number and your name in and mail that petition to 3 different locations. I would encourage you to do it, because at the point where this thing does get overturned, because I think it will, is you will get your money back at that point. So, but do it under protest. The attended attended RAC meeting last night with Supervisor McClure. Got a large dollar amount of project presentations and proposals that people are asking for. the money is limited, and we are going to be scaling back on different projects that are there, and hopefully we'll have some creative ideas that have been discussed to address these. It did, however, come to my attention that the Forest Service had 4 or 5 projects they put in for proposal, but one of those projects, which I was extremely disappointed to not see on that, is engineering or rebuilding the road to Goose Creek. This has been an ongoing issue with the county. We were given property on the sale of Goose Creek, and that road has never been fixed. It's a Forest Service road. We were given promises that the road would get engineered and they would get the thing fixed. Nothing's been done. They haven't even done the engineering on it. So this would have been a perfect opportunity for the Forest Service to request funds to do the preliminary engineering studies, but they don't even know what angle they're going to go on Goose Creek. This is a couple years later, so I don't know how long things take in the Forest Service to get done, but I do want to add something on the legislative budget issues in terms of sending a letter out. It really is hard to develop trust and faith in the Forest Service when promises still have not been fulfilled that were made, or even attempted for that matter. Anyway, the rest of the projects were good projects. We've got a couple county road projects in there too that would do some permanent fixes or semi-permanent fixes, some of the roads that we have constant maintenance on. Attended a solid waste meeting. Attended the tri-agency meeting. Supervisor Finnegan mentioned looking at the future of what the agency is going to look like going forward. I would have liked to attend apparently all the supervisors except myself, 4/5 of the board got an invitation to the dental, Dr. Wood I believe it was, and that would have been nice, but I guess the agency that put it on, or the organization, kind of forgot one of the members of the board. So had a gender review. Did have a conversation with Zach Larson, as Supervisor McClure had mentioned, in regards to the monitoring. We want to have local people involved with that. And right now the state's kind of go in the direction of not having local folks involved with that, and I think that's a key component. That's the reason that our array we put out there had so much success, is there were local folks involved. It was a partnership, and I know Zach put quite a bit of work in that. So I'd like to see the same thing going forward in terms of the monitoring. There should be a share of the cost spent here locally, not just with a few favored entities. Sat in for Supervisor Finnegan at the Border Coast Regional Airport Authority. It's nice to, we get reports back from both Supervisor Hemmingson and Finnegan as to where we're at and stuff, and it's good to go and actually see face to face and hear from some of the consultants as well, as that there is progress happening on the airport. I know people get discouraged, and there's even been letters to the editor in the past, but it's moving. But it is kind of like a boulder going up a hill. It's small steps. Although if everything goes accordingly, we're still looking at 2016, 2017 to have the terminal built. Now, I told the airport manager I wouldn't hold him to that, but I wanted to get a ballpark figure. So obviously, as you know, in any government project, or for those of you who don't know, little things can get thrown in this thing and throw it off at any particular moment. So. But it is nice to know that there is a cohesive effort with both sides of the border, which I think we're one of the few regional airports that cross state boundaries in the United States. So that's a real good thing. It does show the benefit of partnerships. Also with Supervisor Hemmingson, had a presentation by the Sheriff's Department at the Felony Investigation Unit. And it was good to get an educational view about, there's a lot of good things that they are doing out there you're just not aware of. I know it seems like you read the newspaper and you've got headline after headline of negative news. These guys are making some really good inroads into dealing with the marijuana suppression as well as burglaries that have happened in the last couple years. It's just, when you're impacted and it's not immediately resolved, sometimes it feels like nothing's happening, but they are at work, and it was good to see that. And I read the state is actually, a lot of the different agencies are looking to the Delaware County Sheriff's Department, in particular Seth Semino, who's leading the 215 enforcement stuff in terms of dealing with medical marijuana. And he's had some articles published statewide, so I thought that was pretty impressive for the rest of the state to be looking at Delaware County on leadership in that particular area. Read the ag report, which just came out. I think it once again puts an exclamation point on that. The agriculture in Delaware County is an extremely important part of our economy, and the input and the millions of dollars that they contribute to the local economy. Drove by the old ice plant yesterday and got to see the tear down, and actually worked a summer at the ice plant under Bob Doan. And it was one of the harder jobs, physically harder jobs that I've had to do. That making babies is what they used to call it, in terms of making the clear blocks of ice to put in there, and just in the fish storage and everything. That was kind of an icon, and it looks a lot better being torn down now. But there are quite a few memories in that place. Also, my son got to start the first week of school at Mary Peacock, and he is excited that Mr. Phil Singer is his teacher. So hopefully he's a good teacher, and I'm hoping my son can definitely do good again this year. So,
Chair Sullivan, one thing I forgot, piggybacking along good news, yesterday I did sign the grants from the FAA regarding, one was, each one was for a couple of $1 million each. One was for the final design, including the engineering and the environmental for the terminal, the new terminal, and the other one was for the construction of the runway safety area. So those are multi-million-dollar grants. Thanks to Congressman Thompson for following through on these and making sure they happen, but I did sign those, and what that means is that we will now have a shovel-ready project for construction of the terminal for additional funds, and I look to be breaking ground on some of those issues this spring, not 2016.
All right, well, I set lower expectations, and then,
you have low expectations, you get low outcome.
Well, it is encouraging. It's nice to, because we do, you guys inform us on a regular basis of what exactly is happening at the airport, but it is good to see face-to-face with the airport manager and hear, other people reiterate that the ball is moving forward. It's these major infrastructure projects, whether it's broadband, which we should have redundancy by the end of the year, the airport, the sewer, the harbor, all these things are happening. And I know a lot of folks feel it's just gone slow, but you can see when you take a look at the harbor now, that seemed like it took forever, but now it's rolling. So very positive things for the local economy to get that infrastructure to try and get us to par on this level playing field with a lot of other communities. So anyway, good news on that. At this point, we are going to now hear a brief report from the County Administrative Officer, Mr. Serino.
A couple of projects we're continuing to work on. Battery Point is ongoing, should be done by the end of this month, and I hope to be able to report at the next meeting that it is complete. Point St. George, they are continuing the environmental monitoring for the document, and we will be having I believe we'll be having a conference call and possibly even a field meeting in regards to some of the issues, primarily in this case revolving around wetland delineation. The recreation fields have been improved with the rubber mulch and actually expanded out here at Pike Field to take in a little bit more area and then tidied up around. John Horner was the coordinator on that. Obviously, we've been working on the budget, and one of our other issues that have come up, or not issues, but legislation that we're following, is pension reform. And we do expect that will be signed by the governor, and then we're looking at its implementation on January 1 and how that will affect existing employees and future employees. Most of the highlights of pension reform are already being taken care of in Delaware County, such as salary spiking and such that hit the headlines in many of the other jurisdictions to the south of us, but we'll be continuing to follow that one for implementation.
Okay, thank you. At this point, any questions to supervisors for Jay? Okay, at this point, we're going to take public comment since we're past the timed item. Members of the public may address the board on matters which are within the jurisdiction of the board. If you are addressing the board regarding a matter listed on the agenda, you may be asked to hold your comments until the board takes up that matter. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less, and notify us when you come up into the mic who you are and where your residence is. Any public comment?
My name is Summer Clausen. I'm with California United Home Care Workers. Can I share some paper with you before I get started?
Do you want to pass them?
Well, we've been in negotiations, the home care providers in the county, for quite some time now. One of the things that we did to find funding for our raises is the California Community First. And I'm not sure you're aware, but the Community First passed. It's $573 million going to the Medi-Cal, Medicaid in California. Part of that funding is reserved for the IHSS program. We found the funding for the raises for our providers. And we needed to let you know that because it's on our intent to seek out that money, to give our providers raises so we can get them out of the food lines and into the grocery lines. And I don't know if any of you are aware of the elderly and the disabled, how far those services they have to travel are. 2 hours to Medford, 2 hours to Eureka, cost a lot in gas. Our providers pay that, and they get no reimbursement for gas. If their recipient, which is the person they take care of, has to stay in the hospital overnight, they are not paid. It strictly comes out of their pocket or the drive back to Del Norte County to drive back up there again. And I just want you to know what we're facing here. When you have an 82-year-old woman who don't want to be alone, and she grabs your hand and asks you not to leave. These are the choices that we're facing as home care providers. And our own families are suffering. Our families are suffering with their power, they're suffering with their rent, and it's going down month by month by month, waiting for some kind of resolution for our raises. So I'm asking you all to take a serious look at this and consider that after our next negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you, Summer. Any other public comment? Yeah. If it's a budget item, we're going to bring it up later in the meeting. So yeah, we'll do it at that point. Any other public comment on item not on the agenda? Okay. At this point, I'm going to close public comment, and we will go to the next timed item. 1035, approve a deferred improvement agreement, which is item 18 in the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I have to recuse myself.
Okay. Okay. And approve a deferred improvement agreement at 1039 Harold Street for the construction of curb, gutter, sidewalk, and underground storm drain improvements, as well as the corresponding road improvement plans associated with building permit B32148 as requested by the assistant engineer. Staff wants to, Roseanne?
Jordan Keckery, applicant on a building permit for an overheight and oversized accessory building, would like to defer his curb gutter, sidewalk, and storm drain improvements. Staff feels it's appropriate since there are no other curb gutter, sidewalk improvements along Harold Street. Adjacent to his property on Wilson Avenue there are. Those are within the city limits. So the recommendation is to approve the deferred improvement agreement. Are there any questions?
Questions from supervisors? Yeah, Supervisor McClure.
So will we continue to do the, it's like a blacktop runoff. It's not really a curb or gutter, but it's where there's access. Is that going to continue to be in that section? That the current building has that, and so it's going to be the same
It would
type
remain
of
the same.
approach?
Yes,
Okay.
until the deferred improvement was called.
Yeah. Okay.
Any questions from supervisors?
No, I've been over this numerous times with CDD and with Mr. Keckery, and I would move to approve.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and approved. At this point, I will open up for public comment. Mr. Keckery, would you like to say anything, or? You don't have to, I just, okay, you're good, okay.
Probably don't want to.
Okay. Any other public comment? Okay, I will bring it back to the board, and Joey, could you pull the vote, please? Or Tony, either.
Supervisor Finnegan,
Yes.
Chair Sullivan,
Yes.
McClure. Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Supervisor McNamer?
Yes.
All right. It's been moved and approved. Okay, we, at this point, are going to go back to the consent agenda. And minus number 16, which was already voted on, I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve.
I've got a motion.
I would like to pull an item for discussion if we could.
Sure. Which item? We need a second here also. Are you seconding also? Is that correct?
I'll
Okay.
second with asking to discuss item 8.
Okay, so we'll pull item 8 at.
I had a question on number 9 as well.
Do we want to pull that as discussion item?
Well, you tell me. On J, yeah, I would like to pull it for discussion.
Okay.
Maybe
Yeah.
the treasurer tax collector come down there. Just had a brief question on it.
Yeah,
Okay.
And I'd like to discuss 2.
Okay, we'll pull 2. So these really aren't consent so much here.
Not so much.
We'll go, okay, I will at this point.
Throw in 11.
We're going to throw in 11? Okay, we're going to throw in 11. Okay, so the rest of the consent, so is the motion, has that been modified to
Yes, I
to
will
exclude those-
modify my motion
Okay.
I
to
will modify my second.
to
modify for
exclude
discussion 8,
number
9, 11.
2, 8, 9, and 11.
Yes.
All right. So now that we have a consent agenda, any public comment on all those items except the ones we just took off? Okay. Well, that's good. Back to the board. Any questions on? No. Yes, we're good. Could you pull a vote?
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor McNamer?
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Chair Sullivan?
Yes. Okay, it's been moved and approved. So let's start with number 2. Approve and authorize the chair to sign agreement for employment benefit brokerage services between the County of Del Norte and Alliant Insurance Services for the period of August 2nd to 2012 to August 1st, 2015. Supervisor Hemmingson.
And my question was pretty simple, is why such a long term on this agreement? Is that for our benefit, for their benefit? And is there any penalty whatsoever for the county if we give them 30 days notice and opt out?
Based on the agreement before us, no, I don't believe there's a penalty if we opt out. It would have to be for cause, if you go
Well, I read
through
in
there.
there someplace where we could opt out with written notice within 30 days, but I was unsure of whether we would have to pay the profits or not. I think it said that we didn't, but I was just unclear on that.
Well, County Council could weigh in, but my understanding of it is, you know, the only reason we would opt out of the contract is if there was a breach on their end of it. That's typically why we would do it. If we did that, I don't believe there would be profits or any type of penalty to the county at that point.
Well, it just says in there that they believe that they could save us more money than they're going to charge us. That isn't very reassuring to me. It could actually cost us what it's costing us now, plus what we're going to pay them.
We are currently under the information that's been turned in, and to give the board an update on how this has occurred, it's been going on for several months. We went through a competitive process under a request for proposals, and essentially the request is for a brokerage service to assist in implementing basically the federal health care, as well as reviewing our current plan and benefits and coming up with any solutions, and we left it very broad in what we're looking for. We're looking for stability within our health plan, we're looking for savings, and we're trying to maintain our benefits at that same level. With that, we went through an RFP process, which then whittled down to 2 primaries, and then we asked for even more information on that, which there's a lot of detailed data that had to be released from our third-party administrator, which is Delta Health. They did that, and from that data, included in this budget that we'll see for the final on the 25th is savings well in excess of what is being charged for this contract. And it's a very conservative number at this point. I think to go back to your question regarding the 3-year contract, there are some potential changes that could occur. Obviously, the first year is developing a lot of information and implementing changes administratively that we can that save the county and our employees money. The second half of that would be looking at our overall plan and whether or not there would be any changes in the plan. That requires collective bargaining if there's any changes. That takes time. So I believe that the Health Plan Committee, when we looked at this, was confident that a minimum of 2 years, if not 3 years, would be required to get through this entire process. We obviously hope that it's a lot quicker than that, but it does take time.
Well, and that was my concern, that, you know, I don't think we can continue the direction that we're going with healthcare costs for the county for the next 3 years. So that was my concern, is why are we stretching this out over 3 years when we should be getting to the point?
And we are getting to the point, yeah. And I can give you a better explanation, but you know, ultimately, they have been developing this information, and we believe it's very solid information on some changes we can make, and we're going to make that as part of this final budget. So, and we hope that immediately after that, for next year, we're looking at some additional changes to save us even more. You know, the cost of health care is outrageous right now, and it doesn't look like it's coming down. And our claims have been very high over the last year. It's not a stable environment, and that's what that's our goal, is to stabilize it as much as we can with what's within our control.
Thank you.
To answer your question as to the termination, the county, under the terms of this contract, can terminate this contract for any reason with 30 days notice. County will be only responsible for the services and any products up until that termination, and not responsible for any lost profits.
Right. And that's what I thought I'd read. I just wanted to make sure that was the case. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions regarding number 2? Okay, I'll entertain a motion at this point. Any public comment on number 2? Okay, seeing no public comment.
Okay.
Yeah, we could take them all at one time. Let's go on to number 8 then. Approve and authorize the chairman to sign a memorandum of understanding between Delaware County and Shasta County for the provision of Delaware County Jail services consisting of housing sentenced Shasta County inmates in the Delaware County Jail for the amount of $77 per day per inmate, plus $3 per day for medical, effective as of the date signing for a period of 1 year as requested by the Sheriff Coroner.
Yes, I have the questions on this item. It just kind of grabbed me when I read the plus $3 per day for medical. I know one Nexium pill costs $3.
The $3 is the cost that normally goes to an inmate when they request to be seen by medical staff. That is the minimum charge that we can charge to an inmate, or that's the maximum charge we can charge under our current guidelines. So that $3 is being paid by Shasta to allow any of their inmates, while they're here, to have access to medical without having to pay it out of their own, so to speak, out of their own funds.
Okay, so then you're saying that it's an average of $90 a month we're charging for?
80. 77 plus $3 a day.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No, I was talking about just the $3 times 30.
It's daily. So you have $77 a day plus $3 a day. So that's a total of $80 per day for the housing of the inmates.
Okay, and housing the inmates, all medical aside?
Not all medical.
Well,
Right.
That's where I have a hang-up. It says major medical will be paid by them.
Yeah, any visits that would require them to go to the hospital would be picked up by Shasta County.
And
anything that we do in-house would be,
right.
And that cost is already bore out in our averaging, so that's already baked into the cake, because we base our costs on a per cap, how many inmates that we average. That's how much we balance forward in our budget. So that's that medical figure for like the average daily medical, you know, the things that we normally cost, it's already baked into the cake. So what we're really looking at is $80 a day revenue to offset operational costs.
Okay, so then when the nurse or PA, whatever they are, that comes over to the jail to check out an inmate, this cost, that's going to come out of the $3 per day?
No, the $3 is what we normally, it's what we can charge an inmate if they request medical call. That's any inmate that's in our jail, if they want to go to medical, if they have the ability, we pull $3 from their funds to pay for that request for medical call. If they don't have the money, they still go. But what Shasta is doing is in paying that $3, they're covering that cost for their inmates.
Okay, I was just very concerned that I didn't feel $3 was going to cover what
It wouldn't.
Huh?
The $3 would not cover, but what Shasta is doing is basically making sure that their inmates have access, if they so need it, to that daily medical without it, that with their putting up the money as opposed to the inmates' funds having to come out of their dollars.
Okay. There was something else in here. I guess that's where I got concerned about the medication. It said that when the inmate is shipped here, they will be given a 10-day supply of medications with them.
Correct. If they have any medications that they're on, yes.
Right. After that, it's going to be included in...
It's our normal operational cost. And that's what, like I said, that's already baked into
our cost.
Yeah, that's already baked into the
that
cake.
point on.
I mean, that's
what I was concerned about, was that being our cost.
Mm-hmm.
Supervisor McClure.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions in relationship to the compensation. That, are we going to ask them, are we going to do it quarterly, monthly? How are we going to make sure we recoup all of the necessary, what's the methodology that we're going to have to make sure that we recoup all of the available revenue from these communities?
We'll be billing them monthly.
Monthly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. Thanks, Dean.
Thank you.
Okay, we will, seeing no other question, public comment. Okay, we'll go on to item number 9. Authorize the tax collector to approve and execute the revised contract with official payment as requested by the treasurer tax collector. Supervisor Finnegan.
Yes, it's really twofold. Number one, I guess there is an existing contract, and all we're doing is revising it, rather than, does that fall under the guise of a contract extension? Or is it just, if we didn't approve the amendment or the addendum, would the existing contract remain in full force, number one? And number two, I'd like a progress report. It says we've been doing business with these people for years, yet we continually talk about how, you know, money's falling through the cracks and we should rely more on collections, and, well, what the heck's going on? And how's it impacting us? If they're doing a good job, then keep them, and if they're not, then let's look for an alternative.
Does this contract need to be voted on at this meeting, Jay, do you know? Or can we extend this out to the next meeting?
Well, that would be a question for the treasurer tax collector. I don't know what she has in mind if this isn't approved or not approved.
Okay, do we have a representative from the...
I know that she is out of town at attending a seminar. I checked in there this morning.
She have staff?
Well, the contract's been approved to form and content, and is it the contract still in full force, or is it only the amendment that we're adding to it? When does this contract expire?
I have not actually, if I did see the original contract, I don't remember what the terms of the original contract were. It certainly would be a quick answer. I just need to pull the contract that we currently have in effect. And
I just don't want to let an opportunity to take a look at the way we're doing business and see if we can't do business better, or if we're doing a great job, to say great job, and this will enhance it, rather than just rubber stamp it.
So maybe,
So,
go ahead.
how about we just pull it till we can get a response?
Table it to next meeting?
Yeah.
yeah, I would say that if we already have a contract into place, that contract will stay in place, as far as I'm aware,
Right.
until there's a modification of it.
Okay.
Supervisor Hemmingson.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to know if this takes a special credit card company to do this. I mean, the merchant card? I mean, why, were there other companies looked at? I didn't see an RFP that went out. We just seem to be going along. I don't have any idea if this is a good contract or a bad contract unless I have something to compare it with. I had some real concerns. I'm glad David brought it up because I was going to bring that up also. And I don't understand why, if we've been under contract with them, why are we made to continue that contract out? Usually they want to recoup their costs for the machines or whatever, if that's part of the deal, but that should be taken care of in the first leg of the contract. We shouldn't have to be tied to them for another 2 years, in my opinion, if there's a better company out there. So I'm concerned that maybe all the options weren't looked at.
Okay, so we'll table this item to the next meeting and ask for a presentation by the tax collector treasurer for that meeting. Thank you. All right. Moving on to item number 11.
That's me.
Adopt and forward the attached resolution to CSAC. The recommended resolution establishes the county's acceptance of payment via the state payment option under the reauthorization of the Secure Rural Schools and Community Self-Determination Act, allocation of 85% towards Title I, and allocation of the remaining 15% to Title II for the current funding cycle as requested by the Community Development Department. Supervisor McClure.
I just wanted to hopefully assist people in understanding that the Title I are the road dollars and the Title II are the RAC dollars, and RAC dollars could be split into a Title II and Title III, but with the great research of community development and administration, it's to our benefit to make sure that these dollars go 100% to Title II so we can actually allocate them and spend them. I just wanted to say thank you for doing that complicated research because it's not a very fun law to read. So thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
And along that lines, if people are wondering why is it going through a CSAC resolution, it's because in their infinite wisdom, they added an extra step or another layer of paperwork that we did not request. And it wasn't CSAC that did it, it was the feds that wanted state involvement.
I know, we better talk to CSAC. Somebody needs
well,
to go.
CSAC's looking after your behind there, and somebody ought to be questioning the feds why they're not passing it directly through to us.
Yeah.
So with that, I will move the consent items 2, 8, and 11 and recognize that number 9 has been pulled for further discussion.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any public comments? Okay, bringing it back to the board. Tony, can you pull the vote, please?
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor McNamer?
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Chair Sullivan?
Yes. Okay, those items have been approved. Okay, we're going to go on to item number 19 on the agenda, which is conduct a public hearing to open the final budget hearings for the 2012-2013 fiscal year, review budget recommendations and adoption of the sheriff jail budget plan for the 2012-13 fiscal year, and direct staff to make appropriate changes and take action as recommended as requested by the county administrative officer. Mr. Serino.
As is required by government code, the board is asked to open the public hearing for 14 calendar days and accept any comments or any changes. And the request before you today is to open the hearing and continue it for that 14 days to terminate on the 25th. If we can get to the final budget on the 25th, the ultimate day is actually October 2nd. That's the latest we can go to a final budget. The second action on this, and I'll have some additional explanation, is to take action eliminating positions within the sheriff and jail budgets. That would be 2 correctional technicians, 1 correctional officer, and 2 deputy sheriff positions. As of late last week, this was the plan put forward by the sheriff that we had requested to meet the net county costs, which was the budget directives to all county departments. Late last week, we were engaged by the Sheriff Employees Association and received a formal proposal, and I won't get into all the details of that because it is part of collective bargaining. Suffice to say, it's intended to come up with a solution to try to save as many positions as possible. We've gone through this process now for several months. And the sheriff has also provided a potential revenue source. He was meeting with the district attorney yesterday, and I'm not aware of how that meeting ended at this point, but we'll be having discussions. Essentially what we're asking to do today is, in the spirit of cooperation with SEA, to try to solve this problem before we have to come to a final budget. And I believe we're on the right track as of this morning, speaking with one of their representatives and getting the formal request in. I think that by the middle of next week we'll have a resolution one way or the other as to what savings we can find and what additional revenues might be available to offset this deficit. I believe you remember, but we started with a $1.3 million deficit because of AB 109 primarily. You just previously discussed the Shasta County and Tehama County agreements, or one of the agreements. There is, that's very fortunate that those counties came forward, because that's a considerable amount of revenue. Otherwise, we would be looking at a very large deficit at this point. Following the board's goals and policies, we are at a point where we now have to act. Notification would have to go out on those positions in about 7 days. We hope to avoid that, and that's the intention today. So with that information, I'll accept any questions.
Any questions from supervisors? No? Okay. At this point, then, we'll open to public comment. Any member of the public wishing to comment, limit your time to 3 minutes or less.
Summer from California and Home Care Workers. That new funding that came up, had anything to do with Community First? Do we know?
Go ahead.
I do
Would you
know.
like me to answer that? No.
Yeah.
No, it isn't.
Okay, thank you.
No.
Okay. Any other public comment? So at this point, bring it back to the board. And at this point, we are opening the public hearing, so it will be continued to September 25th. And I think the direction from the board at this point is to continue negotiations.
Yeah, we would like staff, the board to be directing staff to go back into negotiations and attempt to solve this issue.
And I think just for the general public's information, things are, I know when Janine was in your seat prior, Jay, she mentioned that things were getting tight, and things have gotten extremely tight. So budget woes are, unfortunately, I think they're still going to continue for foreseeable years. I don't see any quick fix in the current budget cycle, and hopefully we can get favorable negotiations and get something resolved. So,
yeah, I would like to say, it is a difficult time, and it's a difficult process, and there's a lot of competing interests, but I do appreciate the SEA stepping up and discussing this with us, and I hope we get to a resolution quickly.
Excellent. Okay.
Well, I'm hoping that we get to a resolution. I've always been a strong proponent of public safety, and I would hate to see us lose anybody, but at least, try to save as much as we can on the force.
Yeah, this board and other boards have been very supportive of public safety, and public safety takes into a lot of departments, important departments. For the public's sake, we have the jail, the coroner, the sheriff, district attorney, public defense, probation, juvenile hall, borough. All of that is part of our public safety, and that is a considerable amount of our budget, over 60%. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of competing interests out there, because we have mandated general fund departments that we also have to staff and fill and provide those services, along with some services that are very important, public nuisance and recreation and such. So a lot of competition, and the funding sources have gotten a lot smaller over the years. As I said, pretty fortunate with those counties coming forward and needing bed space. That was very much helpful in getting to where we're at now, and now we'll try to finish it up.
Good.
Are you comfortable with direction to staff, or do you need a motion?
I think we just direction staff at this point. So I do want to, just on a side note, we did, Supervisor Hemmingson and I got a really educational presentation by the Sheriff's Department and the Felony Investigation Unit. You guys do great work. I was impressed. I know Supervisor Hemmingson was impressed. I think the general public, obviously because of the work you're in, isn't aware of everything that's going on. So keep up the good work. I know this budget time is, the money side is always a big factor. So, yeah. We opened up public comment. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and continue the public hearing to September the 25th. And at this point, at that point, we're going to go on to the next item on the agenda, item 20. Consider miscellaneous legislative and budget matters pertinent to the County of Del Norte. Authorize the chair to sign and send appropriate letters with respect to matters pending before the state or federal government. Hey, we should have had a longer public hearing on the... Lost our audience.
Most of the legislative items were well covered by Supervisor Finnegan. Did you take the action to eliminate those positions?
We opened the public hearing.
You need to also take the action on those positions. You need a vote.
Okay. All right. Okay, so at this point, I'll entertain a motion then. Do we get clarification on that? Just
clarification. The recommendation is primarily to allow for the notification if there's failure under our negotiations. Okay. That's the only reason why we were doing it at this point is we have a 14-day.
It's along the lines of when the teachers have to give pink slips and then
Exactly.
continue to negotiate to keep the jobs. So moved.
Second.
it's been moved second. Any public comment at this point? Since
I feel confident with that caveat that you will be successful in the negotiations with those unions that wish to participate in saving jobs.
okay, do we need a? Can you pull the vote?
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor McNamer?
Yeah, I just want to say, maybe everybody left too soon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Chair Sullivan?
Yes. Okay. Item 20. I would like to have the board. It goes along with the direction we've gone in the past. Is a reminder letter that we are still waiting for road 15 and 13 to get fixed and engineered. It was a promise when the Goose Creek sale went through that road, we have no access to our property right now through a road. And it's disturbing that there was no request by the Forest Service to even ask for engineering funds to work on that road. And I think they need to step up to the plate. That's one of the things that was discussed. And I'd like to get a letter from the board sent to Randy Moore, Tyrone Kelly, Mary Kay Vandeveer, Congressman Thompson, Senator Feinstein, and Boxer. And, excuse me, Chesbrough. Well, more on the federal side, yeah.
We have a few items that came up during the meeting in regards to letters or legislation. It was discussed earlier about an op-ed for the appeal on the Cal Fire. We had something in here regarding the Goose Creek, which is what Supervisor Sullivan just mentioned. And then the U.S. Forest Service BLM County MOU, which was brought up by Supervisor Finnegan. So taking that as direction, we will go forward with preparing those letters or putting those on the agenda. Regarding legislation, it was, as Supervisor Finnegan said, a lot of gut and amends, which is disappointing because it really takes the transparency out of the process, as transparent as Sacramento can be, and slams it down the throat of the taxpayers at the end. But there are sometimes some good legislation that comes out of that, but in most of the time they change so much that it's very difficult even for the lobbyists to keep up with those bills as they change. We were getting notifications as they went through on what might be an impact on the county, what may not be. Most of them to this point have not required the Board of Supervisors to weigh in. So we are continually getting updates through Peterson Consulting in regards to the bills that were enrolled to the governor. and of course some of those that were not. I think it should be noted the Joshua Lacey bill was not enrolled to the governor. That was one that was definitely something that we assumed would go forward, and it didn't. At this point, regarding the budget, the hearing that was just has just begun. There is the possibility we could have a special meeting or a meeting sometime between now and the 25th. I don't anticipate that. I really do believe that we're going to come to a solution for most, if not all, of those positions, depending on what we can negotiate. And as I mentioned, I'll need to sit down with the sheriff and possibly the DA to see what the conclusion of their meeting was, to determine whether or not there's some revenue available through some of the prosecution that might be able to occur. At this point, that is the biggest issue that we have right now. The rest of the budget is balanced other than that gap. And so on the 25th, we will have a budget before you for a decision. I hope that we can retain those positions at the same time. The policies and goals of the board has always been to try to retain the positions. Obviously, we have cut very thinly because of attrition and retirements and not filling positions. And at that point, you know, every position tends to be a very important position because some departments could ultimately fail. And when I spoke earlier about mandated positions, we have the assessor's office, we have the tax collector's office, we have the auditor's office. All of those have functions that bring revenue into the county to pay for the services that the public enjoys, or hopefully enjoys. Some of those are regulatory, so it is one of those situations where there is a lot of competition between the departments right now to maintain the service, and that's to be expected. The board has asked that we have a budget process that takes into the results of each department also, and I do believe that the majority of our departments are seeing results, albeit it is very difficult with limited staff to get to some of the constituents. We currently have one animal control officer for the entire county with help from the director, which would not normally happen in most departments or most counties. And building inspectors. We have 2 building inspectors for the entire county, 1 planner. Everything is very thin, and I think that in general terms we're going forward to meet those goals and policies, and we were seeing some turnaround also economically and through the process. AB 109 is a significant issue that we're going to have to stay on top of, and hopefully there is some backfilling of public safety, and we are actually working with our advocates right now and will be over the next 12 months or through the next fiscal year to see if we can receive some of the funds that have disappeared as part of the shift from the ISADIP program to AB 109. And I know that Supervisor Finnegan is involved in that in Sacramento also at this point.
Well, I'm going to just say it on behalf of the board. We appreciate the work, Jay, that you do, and Mr. Shad, and Mr. Lopez, and Mr. Young have all been involved in the budget negotiations, and it is an encouraging sign. I know the SEC is going to come to the table and discuss contributions and concessions. I think that's important. The county as a whole has been taking cuts across the board, and like you said, very many of the departments are thin, razor thin right now. There are no assistants in some cases. That person's out, doesn't get done. So anyway, I encourage you guys to continue the negotiations, and hopefully we will not lose any positions in the meantime. So, any other comments from supervisors?
Yes, you know, there was a meeting I left out when I was down there. I did happen to attend a meeting with the Department of Finance, with Finance Director Ana Monsantos, Nancy McFadden, and Mike Cohen. And just a little stay in touch what's going on, and what's going on is they're already gearing up for realignment 3, which is going to affect mental health, which is going to affect social services, in-home supportive care, things like this. So it's coming. So just trying to keep through CSAC, direct communications line with the administration, number 1. Number 2, I know as a political animal, you know, we are supposed to be nonpartisan. And we really do a good job of it in that we focus on the people that we represent without looking towards a party or political opposition, you know, as much as we possibly can. This is not the case on the federal level. We've seen complete gridlock, and it's happening and has been happening at the state level. And it sure didn't help any matters when the Democratic majority did not even caucus with the Republicans regarding the budget bill, so obviously that is inflammatory. But, you know, at the last minute there was a lot of this gut and amend stuff going on, and there was an opportunity to get some things done, like the repeal of the fire fee. But because party politics, the Republicans were told not to support any new taxes, so they didn't support that single payer that doesn't affect rural counties, because we don't really house multinational corporations that would get a tax break. But the urban and the suburban counties that do have them cut the deal, okay? But in cutting that deal, they pulled out reimbursement for the fire fees and got one of their own special things. So, you know, it is so polluted down there that people will not work towards the middle to try to do what is best for the taxpayer and best for the communities. So if you have any message, it's to the Jim Nielsen's great guy, but I'm listening to his ad in the newspaper, and guess what? That doesn't help this community. You know, unfortunately, yes, there is some agriculture here, but some of those issues, it is straight party politics. And straight party politics is going to get us nowhere but gridlock and services that we cannot pay for, period. So,
I failed to mention that I did meet him this weekend also.
and this was not a speech about Jim Nielsen or Doug LaMalfa or Wes Chesbrough. I mean, Wes tried to introduce a bill to do away with the fire fees, but guess what? He voted for it the first time around. You know, so it's on both sides of the aisle. You know, the fact that the Democrats didn't meet with the Republicans in caucus because they didn't have to. That's not the kind of communication we send people down to Sacramento for. So we have to, I guess, dig in our heels at the local level to do away with this partisanship and try to then take that message to Sacramento. And then if we're successful there, hopefully it can go to Washington because it's impacting us in an extremely negative way.
You know, I would agree with you. I think that it is, Sacramento is, I've always looked at Sacramento far worse than DC in terms of gridlock.
It's not.
Yeah. Well, now you don't need 2/3 vote, so you just, I mean, yeah, I see it on both sides. Both sides could come closer to compromise. I think it was funny. It was at the CSAC conference last year at Willie Brown, of all people, was talking about when they put term limits in, they basically threw compromise and negotiation out the window, and it's all about who's going to get elected in the next office instead of focusing on let's solve some problems because we're not worried about going to the next place. So.
Exactly.
I have to weigh in. Because I think that we may have, as a state, taken a step at solving that problem by doing the single term 11 years in the House. So you're not going to see people jump from the Assembly to the Senate. They're going to be in there for a long period of time. And during that long period of time is when partnerships happen and when neighbors start taking care of each other. But I think that we have experienced over the last several years with this 2-year jumping and the people coming back and forth out of Senate seat to Assembly seats, that it has been truly a case of staffers running Sacramento. And I think now with long-term electeds, there should be hope on the horizon. And I think with local communities that allow themselves to have dialogue with one another, rather than being angry, we meet and work stuff out. I think that we can ripple that puppy right up to Sacramento. So I have faith.
Any other two supervisors want to weigh in on the political landscape in Sacramento? I have to disagree with you on that. I think it's been for a longer period of time much uglier in Sacramento than DC. It's only been the last 2 years that DC you've seen a butting heads, and I think once you get past the presidency,
once you get past the presidency, I think you will get a little more compromise, hopefully at the federal level. All right, so at this point, we are going to adjourn the meeting.
No.
We got one more?
We got to do one more thing to do.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, right,
Accept
right,
the
right.
assessment appeal number 21, accept the, we are
would
going to
move.
adjourn, and then we're going to reconvene as the Board of Equalization. So, thank you for pointing that one out.
You were right and you didn't even know it.
Item 21, accept the assessment appeal withdrawal of applicant Otto Hinkleman, parcel number 110032-60.
Move to accept.
Okay, it's been moved second. Any public comment? Okay, can you pull the vote, Tony?
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Supervisor McNamer? Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Sullivan?
Yes. We are now adjourned.